Welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, we've seen an awful lot of change during the 2 years Trump has been president. American politics has been completely reordered, but also the American media has changed forever. News organizations that seemed like a big deal just 5 years ago are now extinct. Some of them are totally forgotten. Those that remain have either degraded themselves beyond recognition, like The New Yorker, or they've been purchased by Jeff Bezos to conduct unregistered lobbying for Amazon.com, like The Washington Post. It's hard to remember that not so long ago, America had prestige media outlets. Harvard graduates literally went to work for Newsweek rather than private equity. Not anymore. Teen Vogue now has a news division. And so does a New York-based cat blog called BuzzFeed. If you're an affluent single person in a gentrifying part of Brooklyn who likes cats, and of course that's redundant because they all like cats, then you know and you love BuzzFeed. When a BuzzFeed headline commands you to, quote, stop everything and watch this cat who loves the ocean, you do. You stop everything. You watch that cat. When BuzzFeed offers one of its trademark cat quizzes, you dutifully take the quiz. What kind of personality does your cat actually have? Or, how cat are you? Take this quiz. Meow. You think you know a lot about cats. BuzzFeed knows more. On all questions feline, BuzzFeed is the final authority. But what happens when BuzzFeed tries to do real news? Well, in early 2017, we found out. The site released the now famous Trump dossier. It was a catalog of salacious and unverified gossip, financed by the DNC originally, about President-elect Trump. Many other news outlets, nearly all of them anti-Trump, had seen the dossier, but they passed on it. It was just too irresponsible to run. But not BuzzFeed. They thought it was perfect. Meow! So they ran it. 2 years later, the BuzzFeed dossier has come to define the entire Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy tale. The problem is, a lot of the dossier is pretty clearly untrue. For example, one of the key claims in the dossier that BuzzFeed ran is that Trump attorney Michael Cohen held secret meetings with Russian agents in Prague. They never offered any evidence that that happened. There never was any evidence. And then finally, last week, Michael Cohen himself confirmed it never happened.
You have been to Prague?
I've never been to Prague.
Never have.
I've never been to the Czech Republic.
You might bounce my time.
Well, so that seems like a pretty big development. 2 years ago, BuzzFeed told us, you remember it, we did a show on it, that Michael Cohen held a secret meeting with Russian spies in Prague. We've been hearing about that ever since in Congress and on cable news. We have, in fact, halted the normal workings of government, in part because of that meeting. Now it turns out it never took place. So it's not a small thing to learn from Michael Cohen. How did BuzzFeed cover this latest stunning development? Well, they didn't cover it. They ignored it completely. As of tonight, BuzzFeed was promoting instead a story entitled 21 Completely Life-Changing Things You Can Make in a Waffle Maker. There was nothing about the non-existent Michael Cohen Russian spy meeting in Prague. If you only read BuzzFeed, you would never know that that story was false. Well, apparently a lot of people in media only read BuzzFeed and not simply for its lavish cat coverage. This January, BuzzFeed published a story with this sentence, quote, President Donald Trump directed his longtime attorney Michael Cohen to lie to Congress about negotiations to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, end quote. BuzzFeed presented no evidence to show that that was actually true, just unnamed sources. But it didn't matter. The cat lovers on cable news went crazy.
This would be certainly a bombshell information.
BuzzFeed's latest bombshell report.
The White House is slamming a bombshell report by BuzzFeed.
The bombshell report from BuzzFeed.
The BuzzFeed bombshell is true.
Bombshell report.
It was really a bombshell. And actually, in some sense, it was. The claim was, anyway, directing someone to lie under oath is a felony, and it ought to be. Had this been true, the Trump presidency likely would have ended, and for good reason, legitimate reason. But it wasn't true. Instead, it was a lot like the claim that, cats suck the breath from babies, or that a black cat brings bad luck. It was a wives' tale posing as fact. The Mueller investigation itself batted down BuzzFeed's story almost immediately after it came out. And yet, BuzzFeed never retracted the piece. Once again, in its feline way, the site pretended that nothing had happened. You can yell at a cat, but you can't make a cat pay attention, it turns out. To be clear, here are the key quotes from the January BuzzFeed story. Quote, Trump directed his longtime attorney Michael Cohen to lie to Congress. End quote. And again, quote, the president personally instructed him to lie. end quote. And once again, quote, it is the first known example of Trump explicitly telling a subordinate to lie directly about his own dealings with Russia. Explicitly telling a subordinate to lie. That's the claim. Okay. Democratic members of Congress asked Michael Cohen last week about that specific claim. Cohen was under oath at the time, a declared enemy of Donald Trump, not someone who had any reason to lie about this. Here's how he responded.
Mr. Trump did not directly tell me to lie to Congress. That's not how he operates.
Okay, let's try to just make sure we've got this totally clear. Trump directed Michael Cohen to lie. He personally instructed him to lie. He, quote, explicitly told him to lie. Those are the claims from BuzzFeed. Did Michael Cohen really do that? Here's his account again.
Did the president in any way, from your point of view, coach you in terms of how to respond to questions or the content of your testimony before a House committee?
Again, it's a difficult answer because he doesn't tell you what he wants. What he does is, again, Michael, there's no Russia, there's no collusion, there's no involvement, there's no interference. I know what he means because I've been around him for so long. So if you're asking me whether or not that's the message, that's staying on point, that's the party line that he created, that so many others are now touting, yes, that's the message that he wanted to reinforce.
That's the message. So Michael Cohen says, you just heard him say, that Trump claimed there was no Russian collusion and no interference in the 2016 presidential election. If that sounds familiar, it's because that's exactly what Trump has been telling the world for 2 years, every day in a loud voice to anyone who will listen. BuzzFeed claims that this is somehow proof that its original story was entirely accurate. 19 adorable Siamese kittens that are actually talented investigative reporters. We're waiting for that story.